Yeah, Michael Ryan's my name. I live down in Salahead, which is about 14 miles from here. I think every farmer should have a small amount of forestry, even if he's not or she is not in favour of, large-scale afforestation. They should have small amounts of forestry. A few acres is great. It gives you an amenity. It gives you firewood down the road. It gives you a small income as you go along. And it gives you even basic things like fencing materials. Forestry is very diverse, and I think it's very useful, and it's nice to have. Back in 1994, I was a part-time farmer. I had a part-time job as well, worked in Limerick, and I was involved in suckling. I was a suckler farmer. My wife was working at that stage as well, but not for very much longer. But suckling was fairly onerous in terms of time and everything else, and also not a huge amount of money out of it. And I was looking at that stage, I was in my, what was I then, in my early 40s, I was looking at my longer term investment. The new premiums and the new structure, the new forest programme, which as I said was introduced around that time, I thought was quite attractive. And I said, we'll diversify into timber. It'll require less ongoing hands-on work, and it'll give us money when we'll need it more, which will be in 30 years' time. Looking at it in 1994, I thought 30 years would never come, but 20 of them have gone already. So, it's everybody thinks forestry is a very long-term project, which it is, but in reality, looking back, 30 years is a short period of time. I didn't ever really worry about what other people thought, and you were absolutely right. There were farmers who would frown upon people who planted land. It was seen as a sign of failure. And I think this attitude towards forestry has a deeper root, and it goes back to the old walled-in estates, which had lots of trees on them, and which the ordinary common man or woman wasn't allowed to walk through. And I think we had an antipathy towards forestry and trees for that reason. And as well as that, there was no income from trees prior to that. How do you could get no income from them? You planted trees, but you had to wait 20, 25 years before you got any kind of an income. And even then, the thinnings weren't valuable. It wasn't something that you would go into to make money from until the premiums and the grant aid came in. So now you got your land planted free and the premiums came in. And it took a while for farmers to overcome the old attitude. But I think that has been well and truly overcome in the last 20 years, and more farmers. I mean, if you look at Limerick and Tipperary alone, there are over, I think, over 1,100 farmers who have planted all or some of their land at this stage. So attitudes have changed. I suppose I employed, as I said, a forester at that stage, an independent forester. He was a retired man, lived over in Newport, retired at that stage from Quilcha, had worked with Quilcha all his life, and he knew all about trees. I'm a little bit into economics myself, and I looked at the returns over a period of years and a period of time based on what they were at that stage. And arguably, forestry doesn't pay as well as, certainly doesn't pay as well as dairy, it doesn't pay as well as maybe intensive suckler enterprise on good land. But on this kind of land up here, you're 1,000 feet above sea level, forestry is possibly as good a crop as you can grow. And it has the advantage then for somebody like myself then, who hadn't a lot of time, that is not a time-consuming enterprise. Well, I suppose the market for timber, according to all the experts, is very bright. We are currently importing timber into Ireland. Europe has a huge deficit in timber. We've only about 11% of our land under timber in Ireland. The European average is 25%. And even at that, Europe is short of timber. We're importing a lot of timber from Russia, for instance. So, and one would have thought, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, that the demand for timber would be falling over time because of new types of materials, plastics and all of that sort of stuff. Even the limited use for paper they felt with the computer came in, there would be more paper than ever being used, and more new uses for timber every day. Not least of which now is biomass for heating and fuel and that type of thing. The rising price of oil and the looming scarcity of oil means that the value of timber is going to keep going up, in my opinion. I think I will make money out of it. When we look at the whole rotation, I'd say it will make money. Even at this stage, I have about covered all the costs to date. So it's, in other words, the resource I have is probably free at this stage. I'm actually chairman of Limerick and Tipperary Woodland Owners Group. We set it up 2-3 years ago with the aid of Teagasc and with the aid of the IFA. We set up that group to represent small-scale forest owners in both counties, Limerick and Tipperary. And the purpose of a group, I suppose, the main purpose of a group is education. The average farmer-owned forest size is no more than 8 hectares. They're very small. A lot of them did exactly what we were talking about earlier on. They planted small portions of corners of farms or whatever else, and had little further interest in it. And so that left them open to either getting no value from the crop or being exploited by people who knew the value of the crop and came in and took it for a fraction of what it was worth. So one of the main purposes of the producer group was to educate. And we tried to do that by running field days, which Teagasc help out with considerably, and by having cluster meetings of groups of farmers. We have well over 100 members at this stage, and those farmers meet on a relatively regular basis. And the modern thing in learning is what they call peer learning, where you learn from each other. You learn more from each other than from anywhere else, really. So we get people together and they talk about the issues and the problems in the common. They learn about trees from Teagasc. They learn about, the best management practices, the value of timber, how to go about harvesting and selling. That's one of the main roles of the producer group. I would certainly advise people to plant a portion of their land, definitely. Forget about previous, forget about everything else. Everybody should have 3 or 4 acres or more of forestry in some corner of the farm. No one can be so certain about any particular enterprise that they should say, this is the enterprise I'm in, and this is all I will do, and I have no interest in anything else. I think our recent collapse has shown that. So we need to diversify into whatever aspect of farming you can. I think everybody should have some other line, even outside of farming. The man or the woman who says, I am doing this and I'm going to become an expert in this, they're possibly right, but it's a big chance, it's a big gamble. I think everybody needs to diversify. And any of the old advisors would tell you diversification. George Soros or any of those guys would say diversify.